Hey guys, Jake here coming at you with another live math lesson this Monday evening at 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 o'clock Eastern. Today is Monday, November 21st, 2022. And today we're going to be talking about adding, subtracting, and multiplying functions. How you can basically, given two functions, f and g, how you can figure out what f plus g, f minus g, or f times g would be. And then on top of that, we're going to talk about how to evaluate these different kind of combined functions at specific x values. So it should be helpful for you. If you do have any questions along the way, as always with these live streams, just throw them in the live chat. I'm happy to help address whatever questions I can. If they're on topic, off topic, doesn't really matter. Just throw them in there. I'll do what I can. Can't promise I can answer every question you throw in there live without having a minute to look into it or, whatever. But I'll do my best. Maybe I'll make a video about your question later on if I can't answer it live. Yeah, let's go ahead and get into things here. So let me switch over the view here. All right, so we're going to start with this problem right here. We're going to evaluate the indicated function for f of x equals x squared plus 1 and g of x equals x minus 4, where the indicated function is f minus g of negative 1. So let's just first kind of take a moment just to talk about notation, what this is actually asking us to find. Basically, whenever you have like f, plus minus g times g, f over g, whatever it is in parentheses like this, and then some other number out here, in this case it's minus 1, it could be anything. Could be, 10, could be 0, could even just say x. Basically what it's saying is what you're going to have to do is first of all figure out what this function f minus g of x is. So that's kind of where we're going to have to start. In this case, we're doing f minus g. We're going to want to start by finding f minus g of x. And then once you have figured out what f minus g of x is and have that kind of generic function for f minus g, then you can kind of deal with the negative 1 that we have in the parentheses here to evaluate this function f minus g of x at x equals negative 1. So that's going to kind of be always your first step, is finding the generic function for whatever it is that it's telling you to evaluate. So let's start there. F minus g. How do you find that? Well, basically what this is saying is you're essentially going to take this kind of notation here, f minus g, and really all you're going to do is replace this f with whatever your function f of x is, replace this g with whatever your function g of x is, and that should tell you what the function f minus g of x is. So to do that, all we really have to do is take our function f of x, so x squared plus 1, take our function g of x, replace g with this whole function here, x minus 4, and then evaluate your function f minus your function g. So one thing I really want to take a moment to point out here, this is very important. Whenever you're subtracting two functions, f minus g, whatever the two functions are you're subtracting, you need to make sure that your entire second function, the thing that you're subtracting, needs to be fully in parentheses. Really, when it comes to any of these problems where you're combining two functions, whatever the operation is, whether it's adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, or anything like that, I generally would recommend putting parentheses around wherever your function f, wherever your function g, whatever your different functions are. Just put them in parentheses at first. Then you can think about how these different operations are going to distribute throughout the parentheses or whatever the case is. A very common mistake I see is people will just write your function f. So they would just write x squared plus 1 and then put a minus sign and then write your function g, x minus 4. This is not going to turn out to be the right function because the way that we have this written here, notice what's going to happen with this minus sign right here when we go on to simplifying this function. It's going to have to distribute within the parentheses, and it's going to be applied to both this x and this negative 4 in here. If we don't put the parentheses around the function g, that's not going to distribute. So over here, that minus sign is only being applied to the x. So this is not going to be the right function. So you do want to be very careful with that. You want to make sure that you're putting parentheses around each of your functions. Then you can think about how to simplify it after that. But just make sure that you're doing that. So now that we have properly put our parentheses around this, we can think about how to simplify this whole function now. So this basically tells us that f minus g of x is going to be x squared plus 1. This first set of parentheses isn't really going to do anything with our simplification process, but now this minus sign has to distribute. So minus x, and then the minus will distribute to the -4. Negative times a negative is a positive, so we're going to get x plus 4. So notice how that's different from what we had over here. We have minus x plus 4. If you forget your parentheses, you're going to have minus x minus 4. So you're going to end up with a different function there. Okay, so now we can combine our like terms. We have an x squared term. That's not going to be able to combine with anything. We have a minus x term that also won't be able to combine. But then we have a plus 1 and a plus 4. So we can add those together, giving us plus 5. So this is our generic f minus g of x. Now what we need to do is evaluate this at -1. So basically what we need to do now is find f minus g of -1. So all this notation is saying is go to your function f minus g, which we know is right here, and wherever you see an x, you're going to replace that x with a -1. And again, make sure you put it in parentheses. That's also very important here. So we're going to go to this function right here, x squared minus x plus 5. Wherever we see an x, we're just going to replace it with a -1 in parentheses. So we're going to get -1 squared minus -1 in parentheses plus 5. So all we did was go to our function f minus g of x, replace our x's with -1s. I forgot my negative sign there, but that should be a -1 in the parentheses there, -1 in the parentheses here. Now we can simplify this. So now -1 squared is the same as -1 times -1, which is +1, minus -x. The negatives are going to cancel and turn into a positive, so we get +1, and then plus 5. 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 5 is 7. So f minus g of -1 is going to be 7. All right, I'm not seeing any questions in the live chat, so let's keep on rolling here. We're going to kind of keep on this same type of problem here. We're still going to evaluate the indicated function for f of x equals x squared plus 1 and g of x equals x minus 4. But now the function that we need to evaluate is f plus g of t minus 2. So now this is a little different. We're going to kind of start the exact same as we did the last one. The first thing you want to do with any of these problems is first find whatever your generic function, whatever the operation is between these two functions, find that, but of x, or, whatever your variable is, f of x, g of x, f plus g of x. So that's always going to be your first step. Once we find this generic function, then we can kind of worry about how the t minus 2 is going to come into play. So to do this, all we have to do is take our function f, which is x squared plus 1. We're going to put it in parentheses, x squared plus 1. And then we're going to say plus whatever our function g is, which is x minus 4. And again, put it all in parentheses, x minus 4 in parentheses, f plus g. So we're going to add those together. Here's our f, here's our g. F plus g is going to look like this. Okay. Now we can think about how to simplify with these parentheses. So in this case, since we just have a bunch of stuff being added, this plus sign is going to distribute in there. That's not really going to affect it. So we're just going to get this first set of parentheses isn't doing anything. There's nothing to distribute into those parentheses or anything like that. So we're just going to get x squared plus 1, and then plus x, and then a positive and a negative makes a negative, so minus 4. Okay. If you are getting some value out of this video so far, do me a huge favor, smash that like button down below. It really helps spread this video out to more people so we can keep growing the Jake's Math Lessons community and keep crushing it all term long in pre-calc or calculus or whatever math questions you have. So now from here, what we can do is we can just combine our like terms. So we have an x squared term, just one of them. There's not going to be another one we can combine there. Then we have a plus x term, just one of them. Can't really combine anything there. But then we do have a plus 1 and a minus 4, so we can combine those. So we're just going to have x squared plus x are going to kind of carry through. Plus 1 minus 4 is going to become minus 3. So now this is just our generic f plus g of x. Now we can actually deal with this t minus 2 here. So how do we deal with that? Basically, all that's saying is we're going to go to our function f plus g of x, and wherever we see an x, we need to replace it with t minus 2 in parentheses. That's a very key thing here. I'm sure you're sensing a theme at this point. Whenever you're kind of substituting in functions or substituting in different numbers into a function, whatever the case is, you want to make sure to put parentheses around that, because it's very easy to forget that. And when you do, things are not going to distribute or FOIL or simplify the way that they should, and you're going to end up at the wrong answer. So make sure that when we do this, we're going to go to our function f plus g right here. Wherever we see an x in our function, which you can see we have two x's, one right here, one right here. All we're going to do is replace those x's with t minus 2. So we're going to change this x out for a t minus 2. Make sure to put it in parentheses. That's all going to be squared. Then plus, change this x out for t minus 2. Again, make sure it's in parentheses. And then minus 3. Okay, so now from here we can FOIL this out. So do be careful when you have t minus 2 all squared. A common mistake I see people make there is they would just square the t, square the negative 2, say t squared plus 4. That's not how this is going to work, or t squared minus 4. You want to be very careful whenever you have multiple terms being added or subtracted inside parentheses like this, and it's all being squared. Think about what squared means. Anything squared is the same as saying that thing times itself, right? X squared is the same as x times x. 2 squared is the same as 2 times 2. Anything squared is itself times itself. So t minus 2 squared needs to be rewritten as t minus 2 times t minus 2, with each t minus 2 being in parentheses like this. Okay, then we have plus t minus 2 minus 3. This set of parentheses here isn't really going to do anything. We're just going to get t, or plus t, and then minus 2, and then minus 3. Okay, so the reason why this, how we wrote those two terms squared like that, the reason why that's important is because to simplify this little chunk right here, what we have to do now is FOIL this out. So we're going to do t times t is t squared. T times negative 2 is minus 2t. Negative 2 times t is minus another 2t. And then negative 2 times negative 2 is plus 4. Okay, then we still just have plus t. Minus 2 and minus 3 will just combine to minus 5. Now we have just one single t squared term right here, so that's going to stay the same. Then we have a minus 2t plus t, so that's minus 2t is negative 4t, plus t is minus 3t. And then plus 4 minus 5 simplifies to negative 1. So now this is the entire f plus g of t minus 2. And this is as simplified as it's going to get. So, notice it is kind of weird. The thing that we were plugging into f plus g has a t in it. So our final answer isn't just a number, because we weren't plugging a number into our function. We just basically have some different function that's a function of t instead of a function of x. So a little bit odd there, but yeah, that's as simplified as it's going to get, and that's going to be our answer. All right, let's keep on rolling. I'm not seeing any questions in the live chat, so we'll go ahead and go on to the third example here. Again, we have the same f and g that we've had these last two problems. We're going to evaluate the indicated function for f of x equals x squared plus 1 and g of x equals x minus 4. And the function that we're going to be evaluating is f times g of negative 6. So just like we've done in prior examples, first thing we want to do is find f times g of x. Okay, so to find that, all we have to do, keep in mind basically whatever operation is happening right here in this set of parentheses. It's saying we want to find f times g. So all we really should have to set up is f times g, which f is this whole part here, x squared plus 1. G is this whole part here, x minus 4. So we should be able to basically just say x squared plus 1 for f. Again, make sure that it goes in parentheses like this. And then times g is going to be times x minus 4 in parentheses. So f times g of x would be written like this, x squared plus 1 times x minus 4 with each of those in parentheses. And now we want to simplify. So from here, what we can do is FOIL this out. So we're going to get x squared times x is x cubed. Whoops. Okay. Then x squared times negative 4 is going to be negative 4x squared. And then plus 1 times x is plus x. And then plus 1 times negative 4 is minus 4. Okay. If you are getting some value out of this so far, do me a huge favor, smash that like button down there. Really helps my channel, helps this video, helps everybody. We can help more people with pre-calc that way. So just hit that like button if you're getting something useful out of this. But yeah, so from here, we could definitely, you would want to try and simplify this from this point if you can. In this case, there's not really any simplifying we can do because there's no like terms that we can combine here at this point. So this is basically as simple as f times g of x is going to get, but we're not done because remember what we're looking for is f times g of negative 6. So now to find f times g of negative 6, what we need to do is take our function f times g of x that we just found here, and wherever we see an x in this function, we need to replace it with a negative 6. So we have an x right there, an x right there, and an x right there. Okay, so we're basically just going to take those x's out and replace them with a negative 6 in parentheses. So a negative 6 there. We're going to get a negative 6 for that one, and a negative 6 for this one. And then the rest of the parts can just kind of be filled in around it. So it's going to be negative 6 cubed minus 4 times negative 6 squared plus negative 6 minus 4. So literally all we did once we have our f times g of x is take all of our x's out and put in a negative 6. And again, just like I've been saying, just like we've been doing, make sure you put that negative 6 in parentheses. Don't think I'm just writing that to kind of show you, to make it more clear of what you're doing. You really do need those parentheses there, especially when it's a negative number, because if you don't do that, it's not going to distribute and multiply the way that it's supposed to. So in this case, we have negative 6 cubed. Keep in mind, a negative number cubed is like saying negative 6 times negative 6 times negative 6. A negative times a negative times a negative is a negative. So negative 6 cubed should give us a negative number here. And if you misplace the parentheses, I mean, you can see with this term here, we'll get to that in a second, but just squaring the 6 and not squaring the negative 6 is going to give you the wrong number there. So that's what I mean about, making sure you use the parentheses like I did here. But anyway, negative 6 cubed, shoot, let me calculate that real quick. I probably should have done this ahead of time here. My bad. So 6 cubed is going to end up being negative 216. And then negative 6 squared is the same as saying negative 6 times negative 6, which is positive 36. And then positive 36 times negative 4 is going to be negative 144. So the negative 6 squared is a positive times this negative 4 gives us a negative 144, plus negative 6 is minus 6, and then minus 4. Okay, so now we can basically just add all these up here. So negative 216 minus 144 minus 6 minus 4 is going to give us negative 370. And that's going to be f times g of negative 6. All right, cool. Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions in the live chat. If you did get some value out of this, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, please, while you're here. It's a huge help to me. That's the questions that I had prepared for you guys here. So we'll go ahead and wrap things up. If you do think of any questions that you do want to ask, just throw them in the comments of the video, and I'll do my best to come back and answer those for you. But thanks for coming. I'll be doing another live stream next Monday night, 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 o'clock Eastern. Just go ahead and hit that subscribe button while you're down there. Hit that bell icon, turn on notifications. It should notify you when I'm going live next week. And come prepared with any questions you have. I'm happy to help address whatever questions, whether they're on topic or off topic. But see you next week. Thanks for coming. Have a good Thanksgiving.